Welcome back to Crime Podcast's Twisted Love, Crimes of Passion, series episode 15. This season, we're exploring stories where love takes a dark turn. And today, we're headed to Lucknow, India, for a case that really shook up the academic world back in 2016.
Yeah, universities are often seen as these havens of intellectual pursuit, but this case really exposed the raw human emotions that can simmer beneath the surface. It's a stark reminder that passion, jealousy, and betrayal can exist anywhere, even within the hallowed halls of academia.
Okay, so let's set the stage. Our story centers around Dr. Akash Verma, a 42-year-old political science professor. Married, 2 kids, seemed to have the picture-perfect life. And then we have Dr. Kavita Sharma, a rising star in the English literature department, 36 years old and single. Their paths crossed in the most ordinary of settings, a university seminar in 2015. But what started as a shared intellectual spark quickly escalated into something much more complicated.
What's crucial here is the context of their individual lives. Akash, as you mentioned, was established, a family man representing a certain image of stability and success. Kavita, on the other hand, was navigating a different path, perhaps facing different pressures and expectations as a single woman in academia. This difference in their social standing and life experiences likely played a role in how their relationship unfolded.
So we're talking about an affair, and a secret one at that. Think about the weight of that secrecy, the constant fear of exposure, the guilt, the lies. It's a pressure cooker of emotions.
And that pressure can be incredibly destructive. It distorts judgment, fuels anxieties, and can ultimately lead to rash decisions. In Akash's case, he was juggling 2 lives, 2 sets of commitments, and the strain of that deception must have been immense. For Kavita, the secrecy likely compounded the emotional complexities of being involved with a married man.
It's interesting how the whispers started early on. Colleagues noticed late-night phone calls, furtive glances, a change in their demeanor. Secrets, no matter how carefully guarded, have a way of leaking out, don't they?
That's right. The more they tried to hide their relationship, the more noticeable it became. It's almost as if the secrecy itself created the sort of magnetic pull drawing attention to their interactions.
And of course, Akash's wife, Ritu, started noticing changes in his behavior too. The late nights, the increased secrecy, the emotional distance, the signs were there. But when she confronted him, he denied everything. That denial probably only fueled her suspicions and added another layer of tension to an already volatile situation.
Denial is often a coping mechanism in these situations. Akash was likely grappling with his own guilt and confusion. Confronting the truth would have meant facing the consequences of his actions, something he was perhaps not ready to do.
And then on March 14, 2016, the illusion shattered. Akash was found dead in his office, strangled. Imagine the shockwaves that sent through the university. A place dedicated to knowledge and reason suddenly became a crime scene.
This brutal act completely disrupted the perceived order of the university. The initial assumption was robbery, of course, but as the police delved deeper, the investigation uncovered a far more complex and disturbing reality.
The affair came to light, and Kavita's name quickly became central to the investigation. Witnesses placed her with Akash in the hours leading up to his death, and forensic evidence linked her to the crime scene. The walls were closing in.
And remember, Ritu had already voiced her suspicions about the affair to the police. This added fuel to the fire, making Kavita the prime suspect in their eyes.
Under intense questioning and faced with mounting evidence, Kavita confessed. She admitted to a heated confrontation with Akash, fueled by his refusal to leave his family and her own growing despair. It was a moment of passion, of overwhelming emotion that ended in tragedy.
This confession provided a crucial piece of the puzzle, but it also opened up a whole new set of questions. What truly led to that fatal confrontation? Was it a premeditated act or a crime of passion, as the defense would later argue?
To understand that, we need to go back, to examine the dynamics of their relationship, the power imbalances, the societal pressures they faced, and the web of secrets they spun. And that's exactly what we'll do in the next part of our deep dive.
So we left off with Kavita's confession, but a confession doesn't always tell the whole story, does it?
Right, and this is where the trial gets really interesting, because it wasn't just about determining guilt or innocence. It became a public dissection of their relationship, their choices, and the societal forces at play.
The prosecution painted Kavita as a woman scorned, driven by jealousy, and a desire for Akash to fully commit to her. They argued that she went to his office that night with the intention of confronting him, and in a fit of rage, she took his life.
They pointed to the forensic evidence, the security footage showing her entering the building after hours, and the fact that she initially lied to the police about her whereabouts that night.
Oh.
It was a strong case for premeditation.
But the defense presented a very different picture. They acknowledged the killing, but argued that it was a crime of passion, a spontaneous act fueled by Akash's manipulative behavior and Kavita's emotional vulnerability.
They argued that Akash had led Kavita on making promises. He couldn't keep playing with her emotions while refusing to jeopardize his own comfortable life. And that Kavita, caught in this web of deceit, finally snapped under the pressure.
The defense also highlighted the power dynamics at play. They pointed out that Akash was a senior professor, a figure of authority, while Kavita was still establishing her career. This imbalance of power, they argued, made her more susceptible to his manipulation and less likely to extricate herself from the situation.
It's fascinating how this trial captivated the nation. People were glued to the news, debating the finer points of the case, arguing about guilt and innocence, and ultimately grappling with the complexities of love betrayal and the consequences of unchecked emotions.
I think this case struck a chord because it touched on so many universal themes. The allure of forbidden love, the pain of betrayal, the destructive nature of secrets, and the struggle to navigate societal expectations.
The trial wasn't just about Kavita and Akash. It became a reflection of Indian society itself, forcing people to confront uncomfortable truths about infidelity, power dynamics, and the often hidden consequences of passion.
The jury ultimately found Kavita guilty of manslaughter, not murder. This suggests they believed there was an element of passion in her actions, a lack of premeditation. She was sentenced to 15 years in prison.
It was a verdict that brought a sense of closure to Akash's family, but it also left a lingering sense of sadness and unease. A life was lost, another irrevocably altered, and a community was left to grapple with the fallout of this tragic affair.
This case is a stark reminder that actions have consequences, even those committed in the heat of the moment. But it also highlights the importance of understanding the underlying factors, the emotional triggers, and the societal pressures that can contribute to such tragedies.
So we've talked about the crime, the investigation, the trial, and the verdict, but what I keep coming back to is the why. What drove these two seemingly rational individuals to this point of no return? To understand that, we need to delve deeper into the psychology of their relationship, the toxic patterns of behavior, and the red flags that were perhaps ignored or dismissed. So we've examined the events leading up to Akash's death and the legal proceedings that followed, but I think what's really important here is understanding the underlying causes, the why behind this tragedy. What drove these two individuals to such a destructive end?
Yeah, it's easy to get caught up in the sensational aspects of the case, but to truly learn from it, we need to look beyond the surface at the psychological and societal forces that contributed to this tragic outcome.
Let's start with the power dynamics. You mentioned earlier how Akash's position as a senior professor played a role. How did that power imbalance manifest in their relationship?
Well, Akash was established in his career, respected by his peers, and held a certain authority within the university. Kavita, on the other hand, was still building her reputation and navigating the complexities of academia as a single woman. This difference in their social standing created a dynamic where Akash held a position of power, not just professionally, but also within their relationship.
Are you suggesting that Akash might have used his position, consciously or unconsciously, to manipulate or control Kavita?
It's certainly possible. The source material hints at Akash making promises to Kavita about a future together while simultaneously maintaining his commitment to his family. This type of behavior, stringing someone along without any real intention of following through, is a classic form of emotional manipulation.
And for Kavita, caught up in the intensity of her feelings and perhaps blinded by the allure of a life with Akash, those promises might have felt like a lifeline, something to cling to despite the inherent instability of their situation.
Absolutely. She was investing in a future that was ultimately built on a foundation of lies and deceit. Akash was essentially having his cake and eating it too, enjoying the excitement of the affair without having to face the consequences of leaving his wife.
The source material also mentions societal expectations playing a role. Can you elaborate on that?
Well, think about the context. This took place in India, where societal norms and expectations around marriage and infidelity are quite different from those in other parts of the world. The pressure to conform to those norms, especially within a tight-knit community like a university, can be immense.
So both Akash and Kavita were facing pressure from different angles. Akash to maintain his image as a respectable family man, and Kavita to conform to societal expectations of a woman's role in a relationship. It's almost like they were both trapped in a web of their own making.
Precisely. And that sense of being trapped, the inability to see a way out, can lead to desperation and ultimately reckless decisions. In Kavita's case, that desperation might have culminated in the fatal confrontation with Akash.
Looking back, are there any red flags, any warning signs that could have indicated the potential for violence in their relationship?
One of the biggest red flags is the pattern of manipulation and deceit that Akash engaged in. The constant promises, the back and forth, the refusal to fully commit, these are all indicators of an unhealthy and potentially dangerous dynamic.
So what can we learn from this tragedy? How can we apply these insights to our own lives and relationships?
I think the key takeaway is the importance of recognizing red flags in any relationship. Whether it's romantic or professional, we need to be aware of the signs of manipulation and power imbalances. And equally important, we need to foster open and honest communication to address those issues before they escalate.
The Lucknow Professor Love Affair is a tragic reminder that love, passion, and betrayal can have devastating consequences. It's a story that compels us to examine our own choices, our own relationships, and to strive for healthier, more fulfilling connections built on trust, respect, and mutual understanding.
And ultimately, it's a story that encourages us to have compassion for all involved, to recognize the complexities of human emotions, and to acknowledge that even in the most unexpected of settings, darkness can lurk beneath the surface.
Well, this has been a truly insightful deep dive into a complex and tragic case. Thank you for sharing your expertise with us today. And to our listeners, thank you for joining us on this journey through the twisted landscape of love and crime. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to follow and subscribe to Crime Podcastle for more deep dives into fascinating and thought-provoking cases. Until next time, stay curious and stay safe.